Welcome to the Election Assistance Commission's video on the testing and certification of voting equipment and systems. In this training, we will introduce the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, describe how the EAC testing and certification process works, and discuss election officials' role in keeping voting systems tested and secure. In 2002, Congress passed the Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, a sweeping package of reforms intended to improve voting systems and voter access across the United States. The legislation included basic requirements for all voting systems used in the federal elections, requiring things like warning voters who select too many options and allowing voters to correct mistakes before turning in their ballot. HAVA also created the first federal agency dedicated solely to improving election administration and voting technology, the Election Assistance Commission, or EAC. As part of its mission, the EAC was tasked with creating a federal program for certifying voting equipment and developing new national standards for voting systems. Testing to these standards, now called the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, or VVSG for short, helps evaluate the technology we use to prepare voting equipment and ballots, record and count votes, and add up vote totals. After initial testing and certification, the EAC also monitors voting systems over time, including reviewing any changes vendors want to make to systems that are already EAC certified, documenting performance issues reported by election officials in the field, and helping election officials determine the cause of any significant problems. This combination, initial testing, retesting any changes, and monitoring performance over time, ensures that the EAC has visibility into the entire life cycle of a certified voting system. So what does it mean to have an EAC certified voting system? Certified voting systems have been tested to make sure they meet all the requirements in the VVSG. This testing is performed by independent test labs accredited by the EAC. Accreditation ensures the test labs have all the qualifications necessary to test voting systems. Though EAC certification is voluntary at the federal level, meaning there is no federal law requiring that voting systems meet the national standards, many states now incorporate EAC certification into their state laws in some way. As of 2024, 29 states and the District of Columbia required their voting systems be EAC certified or tested to federal standards. All told, some election officials in at least 44 states currently use EAC certified systems. How does the EAC testing and certification process work? When a voting system manufacturer creates a new voting system or modifies an existing system, they can choose to apply for EAC certification. That's the first step. Each application contains detailed information about the voting system, including all hardware, software, and documentation, any configuration options, and how the system is intended to be used. Once the EAC determines that a system is ready to be tested, the voting system test laboratory chosen by the vendor will prepare a test plan. This plan shows how the voting system will be tested. When the test plan is approved by the EAC, the months-long process of testing the voting system can begin. Each applicable VVSG requirement is carefully evaluated by the lab. If any tests fail, the manufacturer must fix those elements and have them retested before moving forward. Once all the tests pass, documentation of testing is delivered to the EAC. The EAC reviews this documentation and decides whether the system can be certified. Let's take a closer look at the requirements voting systems must meet to be certified. The VVSG is organized into 4 parts: principles, guidelines, requirements, and test assertions that range from very general to very specific. first is a series of 15 broad principles. These principles cover key topics related to the design, development, and operation of voting systems, including accuracy, security, transparency, auditability, and accessibility. Each broad principle is accompanied by a set of guidelines, which outline specific circumstances where the principle applies. For example, the principle of equivalent and consistent voter access states that all voters can access and use the voting system regardless of their abilities. Two guidelines underneath this principle then provide more information about how to achieve this goal. No matter the voting method used, the guidelines require that a voting system provide a consistent voting experience and equivalent information and voting options for all voters. Next, each guideline is broken down even further into requirements. These requirements are the core of the VVSG and provide detailed information for manufacturers, test labs, and election officials about how specific needs should be met within a voting system. There are over 1,000 requirements in VVSG 2.0, covering items like support for different voting geography, like precinct splits and different election types, such as open or closed primaries, how different kinds of marks made by voters are handled, like marginal marks, etc., and even the physical environment that hardware must be able to operate in, such as temperature, humidity, etc. The EAC also provides test assertions for some requirements. Where a requirement may be difficult to understand or test assertions provide granular instructions to ensure testing is correct and comprehensive. A requirement dealing with power outages, for example, has these two test assertions. The voting system must be capable of operating for a period of at least 2 hours on backup power, such that no voting data is lost or corrupted, and normal operations continue without interruption. When backup power is exhausted, the voting system must retain the contents of all memories intact. The VVSG is updated periodically to keep pace with changes in technology. Proposed version updates are reviewed by subject matter experts and election officials on the EAC's Standards Board, Board of Advisors, and the Technical Guidelines Development Committee, and are also subject to a standard 90-day public comment period. Two major versions of the VVSG have been released so far. Version 1.0, adopted in 2005, and version 2.0, adopted in 2021. Systems certified under version 1 are still valid, but new voting systems will be certified under version 2. You can find out more and see all the requirements in VVSG 2.0 on the EAC's website at www.eac.gov/election-technology. Now that you know a little bit about the VVSG and how the EAC certification process works, let's talk about what happens after a voting system is certified. States often supplement EAC certification with their own certification programs designed to test for state-specific requirements. This could be something like a particular ballot layout that is not included in the VVSG, or a certain way of handling write-in votes. Election officials also have an important role to play, since they are responsible for keeping their voting systems secure and tested on an ongoing basis. This includes acceptance testing on new systems to make sure they perform as expected, and routine logic and accuracy testing to check election programming and configuration before every election. It also includes things like physical security controls and protecting chain of custody for election equipment. The EAC has a number of resources available to help election officials test and secure voting systems. You can find these resources and more information at eac.gov/election-officials. Election officials are encouraged to participate in the EAC's quality monitoring program. This program can help you report any anomalies you experience with your voting system, check that your voting system is still using EAC certified software and configuration options, and stay up to date on available security patches, software upgrades, or product advisories for your equipment. These services are available free of charge to any election office in the country and can be accessed by contacting field services at eac.gov. Election officials are also encouraged to provide feedback on the VVSG. Proposed version updates to the guidelines are posted online when they are available for public comment, and general feedback is welcome anytime. Before we close, let's check your understanding of the material with a few questions. This concludes this course. We hope this training has given you a window into the voluntary voting system guidelines and the EAC's testing and certification program. As always, thank you for your work in elections, and thank you for watching.